Matt Stevens from the Pitt County Cooperative Extension. Thank you so much for being here.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Now, of course, you guys have a campaign going on right now. It's actually been going on since
This is the fourth year of the campaign.
Mm-hmm. And it started in February.
Started in February.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So this is the Keep Pitt Green campaign,
Mm-hmm.
and we are focusing on proper uses for herbicides in your home and garden.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly looking at broad spectrum herbicides like glyphosate.
Mm-hmm.
Broad spectrum herbicides are herbicides that essentially kill or damage any kind of vegetation that they come in contact with.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to make sure when people are using those herbicides, they're using them in areas that are appropriate and not using them in areas where they're not appropriate.
Gotcha. Now, what are some of those examples of appropriate and inappropriate areas?
Yeah, so a broad spectrum herbicide like glyphosate, again, is going to essentially kill or damage anything it comes in contact with.
Mm-hmm.
So you really only want to use it in areas where you don't want anything growing at all.
Gotcha. So those areas are fairly small and remote.
Fairly limited, yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the mistakes that we see people make is treating drainage ditches by the roadways with glyphosate,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that that's an area where they don't want anything to grow.
Yeah.
But those ditches really rely on vegetation to maintain the integrity of the ditch.
Mm-hmm.
So spraying something like glyphosate removes that vegetation, exposes the soil, and leads to issues with erosion, flooding,
Mm-hmm.
clogging the drainage of those ditches. So if you do have weed issues in the ditches, you can use a selective herbicide, not a broad spectrum herbicide, but a selective herbicide, something that will control the weeds that may be a problem, but leave the grass so that grass can maintain the integrity of the ditch.
Exactly, because those root systems essentially kind of act as glue for the soil and kind of keep everything tied together. You take that away, you lose a lot of the microbiology within the soil, and it starts to loosen and then sinks down. And that, of course, leads to, as you mentioned, flooding. People are doing this, outside their homes, thinking that, okay, make everything look nice, don't want a whole bunch of weeds around. But that can, again, have a big impact on groundwater and what happens, whenever we get either a big thunderstorm, several thunderstorms, or, of course, possibly even a tropical system into the east. That can obviously put people's houses in danger as well.
Right. So, people do this with seemingly good intention,
to
try to keep things neat and clean, and maybe make it easier for them to mow the grass, I guess. But you really need to think long-term about the consequences of doing that sort of thing. So we want people to make good decisions and use these herbicide products appropriately.
Yeah, putting in a little elbow grease to get those weeds out of the ditches yourself versus using chemicals to do it, certainly a more beneficial thing to do, even though it's more work, it's harder to do.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Matt. Is there anything you'd like to let everybody know as far as what you guys may have coming up at the Cooperative Extension?
Sure. We have educational programs based around agriculture, food and nutrition, and youth development throughout the year. With springtime coming up, there'll be lots of gardening and youth activities and youth education programs. We're coming up on our summer 4-H day camp schedule, so there's lots of things for adults and youth to do and learn from us. Schedule of all of our activities and events can be found on our website, which is pitt.ces.ncsu.edu.
It's a mouthful.
It just rolls right off the tongue.
Right like that.
Or you can always search for Pitt County Cooperative Extension, and we'll come right up on your search results. And you can call us at 252-902-1700, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have and let you know what's going on.